spoke, and he sounded exuberant, almost joyful. To see us? To be seen?
What a sight for sore eyes. The great DCAK, the great Alex Cross, together at last in a duel to the death, with kitchen knives. I'd pay to see that one, but hey, I don't have to pay. I'm right here, aren't I?
DCAK held his knife up and poised, but he kept sneaking glances at Kyle.
What are you doing here? Admiring your work, of course.
Kyle seemed sincere enough.
Just like any of your other fans would if they could. They'd be lined up 20 deep on the street to see this. I've been following you ever since we met at the Cross House. You think I don't get your sarcasm?
DCAK snarled.
Be a waste of breath if you didn't. Be careful with Dr. Cross now. Watch him. He'll slice you up if he can. He's a cagey one.
DCAK stated flatly.
He can't hurt me. He's out of his league. And so are you. Oh my,
said Kyle.
Now you've gone and cut me, so to speak.
I said nothing to either of them. I was still looking for some kind of an opening. I wasn't very good with knives, but I was quick on my feet. Maybe that would help me, save me somehow. But now I had Kyle to worry about too. How had he gotten here? And what was his current connection to DCAK? Had it just changed?
He's focused on the fight. You're not.
Kyle coached DCAK from the sidelines.
That's all I'm trying to point out. Take it for what it's worth.
DCAK looked back at me.
All right then, let me put Cross down. In your honor.
In your honor? What was that supposed to mean? Then he thrust his knife again and missed, but this time he meant business. Another fast swipe and he sliced my arm. Blood streamed onto my shirt and dripped onto the pavement.
That's better, DCAK.
Kyle cheered him on, his voice suddenly guttural.
Now go for it. Put him down. Kill the bastard.
DCAK was starting to breathe harder, through his mouth. Maybe that could be an advantage for me? I circled to the left, then I changed directions. No logic to it, just instinct. I was moving the other way when he swiped his knife at me again. He missed. I stabbed at him and nicked his arm. Blood spurted from the wound. Nasty game, knives. Kyle applauded. He slowly clapped his hands, but he didn't speak any more encouragement. I moved in a circle again, but I went faster this time. Suddenly I reversed directions, then I came back the other way. Suddenly, DCAK roared in a deep voice and charged at me. I pivoted to the left, and for a second my back was exposed. He was still leaning the other way, which meant... what? I continued to pivot, all the way around. Then I set my right leg and drove my knife up and under his arm. The knife found flesh, muscle. It finally sunk into his chest. He moaned almost as loudly as he had roared a second before.
You stupid son of a bitch!
Then he went down and laid there on his back, wide eyes staring at nothing. I spun away from DCAK and looked at Kyle. I had a knife. He had a gun.
He wasn't much, was he?
Kyle grinned. Chapter 124. He kept on talking, almost as if he were excited to see me. Maybe I was the one he'd been following.
I was so hurt that you didn't come out to Florence to visit me more, Alex. You have no idea. They put you in a tiny cell and keep you there 23 hours every day. It's inhumane and does no good at all. I'm serious about that. Maybe I'll make a deeply disturbing film, like An Inconvenient Truth, or The Road to Guantanamo. Call it Never See the Sun Again. Play it in all the art houses here in the East. Get the bleeding hearts on my side.
You killed a lot of people, Kyle. You committed murders since you've been out. How many this time? Kyle shrugged, and then he mugged for me. He wasn't as good an actor as Anthony, just a more subtle killer.
Honestly, I didn't bother to keep count. There was Mom, of course. Or was that a hallucination that I had?
No. You slaughtered your mother.
Slaughtered her, did I? That seems extreme. I don't actually recall that much about it. Perhaps I was in a rage state. Can you give me some gory details? I want to hear it from you, Dr. Cross.
Is that part of this, Kyle? The psychologist connection?
Could be. I never thought about it quite like that.
I stared at Kyle for a moment and didn't speak. He was so incredibly evil, with no conscience. I wondered how his reflexes were these days. He seemed confident enough with the gun in his hand, and why shouldn't he be? Why would he have any trouble shooting me now?
Kneel on the ground, Alex. Just to be on the safe side. All that training at Quantico is kicking in.
I stood there, refused to obey him. Kyle held his gun arm out, perfectly straight and still.
I said, kneel on the ground. There's still a chance that I won't kill you. I might want an audience for what I'm going to do next.
That got my attention. An audience? What are you going to do now, Kyle? And what part did you play for DCAK and his partner? He smiled and seemed to be formulating an answer.
Interesting questions. If I tell you, is it because you won't be around to see it, or because I want you to be able to anticipate the slaughter, as you call it? Kneel. This is your last warning, Alex.
I bent my knees slightly, and then I went down on them. I didn't see that I had a choice. Kyle didn't like to be disobeyed. That much I knew for sure.
Ah, that's good. This is how I like seeing you. As a supplicant. You know, I almost wish DCAK was alive to witness this.
You could have saved him.
Maybe, probably not. I really think the boy wanted to die. I studied his early murders while I was still an agent. He made contact with me at Florence. I think I might have been a father figure to him. You'd know better than me. I can't live in the past, though. I'm not much for regrets, either. You can understand that, can't you?
What did he mean when he said, "in your honor"?
Oh, that. He was a fan, of course. Who isn't? So was the girl. His sister, who knows? They got the messages to me at ADX through my lawyer, another fan. They're all just freaks, Alex. Although, he did give you a good run. I helped him with a few ideas. The football stadium, that was me. And I suggested Tess Olson, of course. That one was in my honor.
Kyle walked forward and he put the gun to my temple. There wasn't any unsteadiness in his hand.
I, Kyle Craig, being of sound mind and body.
He smiled broadly, wickedly, insanely.
Choose to spare the life of Alex Cross. At this time, anyway.
He took a step away.
I told you 23 hours a day. 4 years in there. I can't let you off this easy. A couple of minutes of abject fear, that's nothing in comparison to what I went through. It's not enough payback. Not even close. You'll see.
Kyle started to back away.
I have bigger and better plans for you, Alex. One thing is for sure. I'm going to torture you and your family to death. Don't bother to try to hide them. I'm really good at finding people. That was my specialty at the Bureau. I have skills, Alex. The mastermind, remember?
Put the gun down, Craig. Do it slowly, you piece of shit, or you really will understand payback. It was Bree. I couldn't see her yet, but I wanted to warn her about Kyle Craig and why you should never, ever warn him. My mouth opened. Chapter 125. Bree! Kyle had been an FBI field agent, and before that he was with Special Forces in the Army. He was an expert with knives, guns, even explosives, and I knew that from past experience. He was no one to fool with, no one to warn. He heard Bree's voice, and before she finished her threat, he was twisting his body around toward her and diving at the ground. I watched, unable to do anything to stop it from happening. "Bree!" His Beretta came up level and was aimed at the center of her chest. He wouldn't take a chance of missing what would be a difficult shot, especially while he was still moving. He had her in his sights, and I had one thought: take me instead. I'm not sure if Bree waited until she had finished the words, "You really will understand payback." I doubt it. She fired, and Kyle Craig jerked in midair. His mouth flew open in surprise. His eyes went wide. He never got a shot off. He landed with a dull thud on the ground and lay there with one leg twitching. Finally, he let go of the Beretta. Then, nothing at all. Nothing. Blessedly, nothing. I hurried forward, kicked away his gun. I crouched beside Kyle, who I'd once thought was a friend, and who had turned into my worst enemy. His eyes were open, and he looked at me, right into my eyes. Maybe my soul. He stared, and I wondered if he was dying at that instant, and if he knew it. Then Kyle spoke, and he said something so very strange, something I didn't understand, not to this day.
"In your honor."
Then a horrible rattle began to stir somewhere back in his throat. And I liked it. Sad to say, horrifying to me, I was relieved and exultant. I'd liked being in the audience, so much so that I clapped my hands together and applauded Bree. And then suddenly, Kyle was on all fours, then up on his feet. He pulled another gun from a holster behind his back. Bree had lowered her gun, and now he had us.
"Put down the gun, Detective,"
he said in the calmest voice I'd ever heard.
"I don't want to kill you right now. Not just yet. Tell her, Alex."
She won't listen.
"Then she's a dead girl. Put the gun down. For Christ's sake, if I wanted to kill you, I would have pulled the trigger already."
Bree bent at the knees and lowered her gun to the ground. Kyle pulled the trigger, but he missed her on purpose.
"You know, Bree, the advice about chest shots versus head shots is good as far as it goes, but..."
He patted his own chest.
"It doesn't allow for the possibility of vests, which I always wear to parties like this one. You should too, especially with that exemplary chest of yours."
Kyle started to back away from us. Then he smiled and said,
"Oh, what the hell. Sorry, Alex."
He fired in Bree's direction twice, and purposely missed again. Then he laughed and ran down the alley, disappearing around the first corner, still laughing. The mastermind. Chapter 126. DCAK was still alive. Bree and I met up with Nana and the kids at Washington Hospital Center, where Samson and Anthony were being treated. Sandy Quinlan hadn't made it. She died before the ambulance came. Samson was going to be fine, according to his doctors. He needed stitches and fluids, but I had no doubt he'd be driving the staff crazy by checkout time tomorrow. Eventually, we retreated to a waiting area so that Billy and Jakota could have some time alone with the big man. Billy didn't seem too happy with him, though, or with me. The kids were full of questions, and Bree and I answered as many as we could, though, as always, we didn't have all the answers ourselves. Not yet, and maybe not ever, especially where Kyle Craig was concerned. So, who were those people, really? DCAK? Janny wanted to know. I've always loved her curiosity, but I wasn't sure what to make of this budding interest in things forensic. The last thing we needed was another dragon slayer in our house on 5th Street. We should know more soon, I told her. Both Anthony and Sandy, her body anyway, had been fingerprinted. I thought they'd probably show up somewhere in somebody's files, maybe even in Kyle Craig's old notes from his FBI days. I finally sent the family home, and Bree and I went to look in on our captive. We watched Anthony through a window while a